All right. Thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Spectrum Report. We have a great show. I'm super excited. We have a great guest. You're going to be happy that you tuned in today. Today's episode, as all are, is brought to you by the Spectrum, by Neural Balance with Anandinol. So today's episode of the Spectrum Report is brought to you by Neural Balance with Anandinol. Anandinol is a patented herbal vitamin mineral blend that was created by a doctor and a pharmacist to help their own families. You can learn more about how it works by going to our website, neuralbalance.com, and clicking on the How It Works tab. Of course, you can also search for us on Facebook. We have a Facebook group that you can join, Neural Balance Support Group, and our Facebook page. Like and follow, and go to YouTube. Subscribe there and hit that bell so you get notifications on future content that we have coming out. So today's guest is, I'm super excited, as I said, to have today's guest on. She is actually one of the founding members of our company and one of the patent holders of Anandinol. Her name is Dr. Batul Hatipoglu. She is the staff endocrinologist at the Cleveland Clinic, and she is here with us today to talk a little bit about CBDs, an alternative to CBD, I should say, and the endocannabinoid system and how it affects various parts of our life, sleep, stress, anxiety, and things of that nature. Dr. Hatipoglu, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Thanks for being here. I know you're super busy, so we will try to make this as concise as possible so that you can get on with your day. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us your background a little bit.
I'm a physician and endocrinologist. I have started my career at the University of Illinois. I was a medical director for pancreas and islet cell transplant. I love teaching, I love doing research, and I love taking care of patients. And then we moved to Cleveland, where I continued my career at the Cleveland Clinic. And I am currently the associate professor of medicine. I teach, I do research, and I take care of my patients. So that is my life.
Yes, you're busy bee, yes. And you also have a bit of a personal connection to why we're here today and why you, as I mentioned at the opening of my show, and I always do because I think it's so cool that our product was created originally by a mom with a need. What do they say? Mother necessity, right? Right. So
That's
tell
right.
us a little bit about your personal connection to all of this.
Of course, I think if someone would have asked me about a moment that I wanted to erase in my life, I think I would just say the moment they told me my son has autism. It's a very traumatizing moment that I think a lot of times healthcare professionals perhaps underestimate the effect on the mother and the parents overall. My boy was 18 months old when I find out that he had autism. And as a physician in academia who was doing research and was involved in science, I actually had no clue what it was and how I could help him. But unfortunately, at the time, neither the medical science, this is 16 years ago almost now, and that's how my journey on this started. And my son also has some other issues like heart disease, so you couldn't always use everything that medical physicians like myself could actually give him. So I struggled, and then I decided, you know what, I should be able to understand a bit more about this, perhaps come up with something myself, as I felt desperation as a mother to help to her child.
Well, and I know one of the things, this is right from our patent, one of the theories that you have is that there's a genetic disposition that is triggered by an event, whether it's an illness. Some of the parents that I talk to, they have a wide variety of things that they point to as a trigger, but also a lot of them say they didn't really see a trigger, that it was a gradual thing. And, one thing, this story I told you a little bit about before the show. There's this fascinating story that was in the Washington Post. It came out last month, actually. And it was about a lady who was looking, she had conceived through sperm donation, and her son developed autism. So as she started looking into it, she found that her boys were part of an autism cluster that involves at least a dozen children throughout the U.S., Canada, and Europe, and they pinpointed it back to a particular donor who it turned out had been very deceptive on his application. So when people were going and looking at his bio, he had, everything you would want in Mr. Dreamy to be the father of your kids, right? And most of it turned out not to be true. Part of what turned out not to be true was the clean bill of health that he gave himself. It turned out that he also has some of these behavioral and developmental issues, and so I think that right there is a big spotlight on that genetic disposition. But at the same time, not all of his children not all of the children did develop autism, some of them in varying degrees. There was a little bit of coincidental timing as far as the age that the children were diagnosed and what have you. But I think it really points to that point that you made in our patent, that there's a genetic disposition that can be triggered by a variety of things. So that was something that I found very interesting. And as soon as I saw this article, it just brought me right back to that. So we here at Spectrum Research Group, we don't really get big into the why. So there are great people trying to figure that out. What we want to do now is offer help and support for parents who have that challenge now. So that's what we want to talk about today. And part of that has to do with educating people on the endocannabinoid system. So as far as medical discoveries go, the endocannabinoid system is relatively new. So one of the things that I wondered about was, how did you initially become aware of the endocannabinoid system and the various processes that it helps within the body?
You wouldn't believe, because I can tell you this was an amazing coincidence, maybe miracle in my life. I was in a conference and listening to a new product that was going to be used for diabetes and perhaps weight loss. As a result, when they were talking about this endocannabinoid system modulator to be used for weight loss, they also mentioned many effects of the endocannabinoids that absolutely linked it to the behavior and the sleep disorders and anxiety and socializations that I was seeing as a problem during that time for my son. And it was a light bulb. I am in this audience about a weight loss drug, and I think only a mother could have linked that,
Right.
that to a struggle in her life that was happening at the time. So I immediately left the conference, went and tried to read about it to understand what was out there in the literature and how could this be linked to somewhat to perhaps autism or autism spectrum disorder. There weren't much out then. There has been a bit more since. We do have in the literature now showing that endocannabinoid system perhaps is linked to these behavior disorders and autism spectrum. So you can think of endocannabinoid system in a way as the scale or the balance of the brain. It totally is at the top, and it balances too much and too little, it just makes the harmony in between different chemicals in our brain. So when you don't have a well functioning endocannabinoid system, you can go one way or other way. That's going to be the too much or too little of excitement in your life.
Right, right. Well, and that was once I, started working with you and Randy, I started diving in and learning more about the endocannabinoid system too, and I was amazed at how much it's not just involved in behaviors and balance, but it's actually
Yeah.
involved in the health of the nervous system, in healing, promoting healing and protection of
Yes.
the nervous system. So when the endocannabinoid system's working improperly, it's not just affecting behaviors, but it's also failing to prevent damage. It's failing to promote healing in the nerve, in the way the nerve cell communicates at the site of nerve cell communication. So we're doing damage as we go. I one way that I explain it to people is like if your knee is hurting and you're limping, then your opposite hip might start to hurt because your gait has changed, so you're wearing it in an unnatural way and it starts to
True.
do damage. And I don't think people, a lot of folks I talk to, they don't realize right there at the site of nerve cell communication, if that is degraded, it's not working properly, it causes damage. So the endocannabinoid system helps to balance that out, but it also helps to protect and heal. So specifically, like you mentioned, that balance, that imbalance, and we there CBD is all the rage right now. Everybody's talking about hemp and CBD and this and that, but that has an inhibitory effect at the site of the nerve cell communication. So correct me if I'm wrong. The way I understand is when the presynaptic nerve releases neurotransmitters, the postsynaptic nerve receives it and releases endocannabinoids, which bind to CB1 receptors, and that regulates the balance or imbalance, if it's not working properly, of excitatory or inhibitory neurotransmitters. So you start to feel anxious or stressed, and then your endocannabinoid system should help to regulate that to bring you back to an even keel. And what's happening in this case is the endocannabinoid system is out of balance, specifically when it comes to anxiety, calm, focus, sleep, behavioral issues. It's often out of balance in the favor of excitation. And that's what causes that sensory overload and the anxiety and all of that. So your desire was not to inhibit or
Correct.
right, you want to balance. And that's one of the
Correct.
things I always say. We don't want to make your children manageable. We want to help them be who they are.
Absolutely. That's the most important part, probably, to remember, because not everything out there, because they work on endocannabinoid system, will do what you want it to do. Indeed, it can be even harmful. You might not know about it, right?
Right.
So when you look at the possible damages that has been shown in animal studies, actually currently in the scientific literature, is that whatever the insult might be, as you mentioned, from an infection to an allergen to any other environmental toxin to anything else that could be, when your system, like almost like an immune system, the endocannabinoid system, is not balanced well to fight against that insult, then you have this imbalance between inhibition and excitation. And you need, that was my struggle originally, to use something uh, for my son that I felt will balance it, not to push it to one side or the other.
Right.
Because if it's too inhibitory, it's going to be like a zombie. And it's too excitatory. I don't need that. I have it
Right.
already.
Right. Well, that's what Randy was telling me, and some of what I've read and talking with you. You and your husband slept maybe 2 hours at a time, 2 or 3 hours at a time, if you were lucky, and very rarely at the same time, right? Because somebody kind of had to be on watch.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Very
Hard
difficult.
time. Yes. Yes. Unfortunately. But
But
luckily, it's
even still,
over now. So.
Oh, yes, yes. But even still, you didn't just want to knock them out, or like you meant, that's a word I use a lot. I hear a lot, zombie. I don't want him to be a zombie. And that's what I love about this blend that you all put together and eventually patented, anandinol. It's because that's what I hear. I hear from parents all the time, and adults. We have a lot of adults that use it. I use it before I fly. We're going to a trade show tomorrow. I'll be using it before I get on the plane. I still don't like to fly, but it balances me out, so I don't have that physical reaction to flying the way I used to. So, and when you're flying at 6 in the morning, it's not really appropriate to be drinking bourbon to get through a flight that early in the day. So I have to find something that will keep me calm, and that definitely helps. So the what is it? What was it about? So let me go back to this. So you're dealing with the endocannabinoid system, which most every conversation these days that involves the endocannabinoid system also involves medical marijuana or CBD. Now, personally, I'm a fan of CBDs and medical marijuana. I see the science behind it. I see that there are a lot of positive things happening. However, and specifically when it comes to kids, for me, there's too much unknown right now. One, we don't have any long-term studies on how it affects the health long-term of children, so that in itself would give me pause. The law is still ambiguous. The most recent farm bill supposedly made CBD and hemp derived products done a certain way legal. However, we just saw a grandmother, I think a great grandmother, 2 or 3 months ago, arrested at Disney World for having CBD oil in her purse. So the law is still ambiguous. Some banks still won't deal with companies that have CBDs. It's just there's too much unknown for me right now. So I would do the same thing you did then. I would look for something that would deal with the endocannabinoid system that didn't have the stigma and the unknown, and that's where you came across passion flower. So what led you to that?
Yes, and it's a very important point that you actually mentioned. We don't have a whole lot of information. We did not have anything at that time either. So it was out of question for me to even think about marijuana or CBD at the time. So, what it was impressive about passion flower, this has been used for centuries for anxiety by herbal community, and it is commonly used in Germany and in my hometown, Istanbul, Turkey, by physicians. They give them to pregnant women, they give them to very young children for mainly calming effects. So, when I was visiting my family one year, uh, I I asked my sister, who is a physician, uh, how often she used this and why she used this, because she was, I was just so desperate to find something and what was the effect. And my sister didn't know what was the effect, but she said, we have been using it all this time. So I actually investigated passion flower from knowing the safety background, as it has been used in different countries and in the for centuries, and then came across in the literature that it worked an endocannabinoid system. It was like
What a coincidence.
I will never forget that day. I was like a mad woman in the house running around, and I'm
The
like, I
mad
found it.
scientist. He's alive. He's alive. That's
I
hilarious.
I found it. I found it. I found it. Everyone is like, what did you find? I'm like, I found something that works on endocannabinoid system and it seems safe. I can use it.
Right, right. Well, and now you mentioned one thing, and this is something that you mentioned that in Germany they use it for pregnant women for
Yes,
calming. Now,
yes, I
we have a warning on our label not
I
to use
wouldn't.
while you're, yeah, yeah.
Yes,
And then
I would
I always
not.
tell people it's a big no-no because I read that in the early stages of pregnancy, it does something with the uterine wall and can actually cause miscarriage.
I
So,
would not use it. It's it's one thing that there is this traditional use. as
Right.
in some places that it has been used, and they but there's no safety information, so I would
It's
not
best to
officially use
avoid.
it.
Right. Okay, good. That thanks for clearing that up, cuz I would feel bad if I was, I could help people and I'm telling them no,
Thank you.
don't, but it's best to be safe for sure.
No, there's no
So,
safety.
then what did you do from that point? Did you try with a tea or an extract, or what did you do?
So I went out and bought the passion flower capsules that I found in the market, and I brought and I tried on him, and it didn't do anything. And
Okay.
I was very disappointed. I
I
was so
bet.
disappointed. I said, "Well, I was wrong. I thought I was wrong." So it's all coincidences in life that brings you to sometimes where you need to go. And I met Randy.
Randy.
Uh, through a family member of his, and I was just telling him how I was so hopeful about this passion flower because the medications that the medical community was prescribing to my son were giving him too much side effects, and I was just so desperate. And he said to me, Dr. Hatipolu, let me send you some samples. Perhaps ours will work better for you. So he had an access to local supplier there close to him. He believed had the highest quality. So I said, fine. So he sent me, I will never forget, in a little plastic bag, this herb looking thing. And then I would put them in a little capsules with my daughter to try on my son, but too. And it worked, and that was another time I
That was
started
another
to
crazy
sing.
happy day, right?
It worked, meaning that he was calmer. Within a week he started to sing um, a song with words, which was first in our lifetime. It was huge for us, I'm telling you. He started to look at my face, and the changes that are very subtle for a normal child is a huge emotional impact for parents like us who just wants
Yeah.
a little bit more. So that was a journey started from there, and that's how we decided to do something more about it.
Right. And now, so Randy took the research that you had done and what you taught him about passion flower, and the capsules that he sent you originally has three types of passion flower. So what he did is he found some good, clean, pure sources, and
Yes.
he looked at how the different, there's no mistake. If we only needed one type of passion flower, then that's all God would have made was one type, right? But we have different varieties, and they have different bioflavonoids in them and different
Correct.
aspects, different parts of the plant. Use different parts of the plant, the flower, the leaf, for to get different ingredients. So he found that if he combined these three in a certain concentration, that's where the best results came about. So that was what he originally sent you, was that the mixture of the three, and it seems like that was the thing that really did it. But he also looked into, okay, so all of this action's happening at the site of nerve cell communication. So how do we make that site healthier and cleaner and things work better there? Not just with the endocannabinoid system, but even with the nerve cell function, the communication. So that's where he came about adding magnesium. He used B6 because B6 helps with cognitive function, but it doesn't typically have that spike in hyperactivity the way a B12 would. And CoQ10 for the antioxidant effects, so that we can help there also with the healing at the site of nerve cell communication. So now your son, who had an imbalanced endocannabinoid system, was getting the balance from the passion flower, getting the clean communication and healthy function from the magnesium and the B6, and then the CoQ10 was helping with cell energy and antioxidants. So we have hopefully what we're looking for is that we're supporting a natural normal process. So, one thing I want to make clear is our intention never has been to treat or cure autism or any disorder. What we have recognized over the years is there are a lot of people that have this endocannabinoid imbalance. If you have ongoing anxiety or panic attacks or disrupted sleep, and there's no solid medical connection behind it, very often it's that endocannabinoid system out of balance, and it causes that misfiring in the favor of excitation. So, for some of us, it's temporary as soon as we check in at the airport. For other people, it's something that they go through on a continual basis. So that's where I found that it's very helpful. My wife uses it when she's on her cycle. Her hormones disrupt her endocannabinoid balance, something fierce. And she gave me permission to say that, so I don't have to be afraid to go home later. But it has helped her a lot. She takes it every day in the morning, and then when she feels her cycle coming on, she adds a second dose in the evening, and it makes a huge difference for her. So we're getting great feedback on it. So okay, so now it well, you of course it took you guys 3.5 years to get a patent for this thing. It's such a difficult thing these days to get a patent for a nutritional product. But during that 3.5 years, he was Randy, because this is what a good guy he is. You know too what a good guy he
Yes.
is. He's such a servant. He loves people, and like you, he likes to research things and help. So he was mixing this. He was ordering raw materials, measuring all this stuff out, formulating it in his pharmacy. He has a compounding pharmacy, and encapsulating it. And he was giving it out to quite a few families during the patent process. And he was just giving it to them. And he'd be there after hours till the wee hours of the morning, mixing and measuring and encapsulating, because he said, he told me one night, once I started giving it to people and it started helping them, I couldn't not give it to them after that. So I felt like I had to keep making it and giving it to them until we could, patent it and move forward with a product. So once you receive the patent in 2014, that's kind of where I came in. Randy and I are friends. My background is in the natural products industry. So once he showed me some of the emails and the letters that he had, I mean, they were amazing. Yours was not the only story that was remarkable like that. So I was very excited about it. So I enlisted a contract manufacturer that I knew, and got a hold of some good suppliers. We have a very small list of approved suppliers. We're very, very picky because the last thing we want to do, I always joke, we don't want to be that product that says it works great, so what's a little red dye, right? We don't want to be that. We don't want to be that. So we take every effort to make sure that the product is clean as possible. It's GMO free. It's kosher. It's there's no gluten. I mean, it's super clean. Even the drink powder, we use beet powder for color. We use stevia. We don't use any sugars or artificial dyes or preservatives or any of that. So we want it to be super clean, because people don't realize how sensitive some folks are on the spectrum. The smallest amount, and I mean, what you would consider a trace amount, for us can send them off on a several day
Correct.
journey of meltdowns and discomfort. So we want to be very careful with that. So that's one thing that he helped me out with when I was formulating and kind of building the product neural balance around it. So the endocannabinoid system is connected to so many things, and it's just such an awesome thing. You said there's no coincidences, and I certainly do believe that. You were in the right place at the right time, hearing the right thing,
Yes.
and then from screaming like a mad woman to thinking it didn't work, back to screaming like a mad woman again. So that's awesome. So how is Bartu now? He's much older. He was only, what, 8 or something then? He was very young.
Correct. He was very young. And as you said about Randy, I'm so grateful. I'll tell you, there were times I was so fearful I won't get enough. And I was just horrified that if I didn't have that, what will happen to my son? It's
Oh,
just, it was, God bless him. Yeah, Bartu is doing fantastic. He
awesome.
is, this boy of mine who couldn't speak at all. He speaks two languages now, and he has his own still struggles, of course, but if one can look for a genius in him, it is about plants. Isn't that funny that a plant that gave him his life back, that he is totally connected to earth, the plants, the trees. He grows tons of things in my backyard, including a lot of natural plants that he calls, that a lot of us would call weed and remove it.
Right? It's only a weed if you don't want it, right?
Exactly. That's
Right.
how he is. So what we are now looking into for him is trying to get a farming project that we can start to perhaps using his talent in farming with leaves and leaf
He
collection.
loves leaves.
And
I
I
mean,
am
your hometown, you have a festival for him, right? That is so cool that your community is rallied around that way.
Oh, I am so grateful to Beechwood in Ohio. I don't think anyone could have thought something like that. They wrote a song for Bartu.
Oh,
They made a day for him, and
that's
they
awesome.
called it Leaf Party. When we entered to that event, we had it second time this year. The first time I said, if God comes to earth and walks within us, that's what I felt. God was with us. It was so emotionally charged. It was unbelievable. And it's the community here welcoming his difference and not feeling that is something to be ashamed or afraid or to push him away. Instead, just accepting him and
Right.
making good out of it. It's amazing to me. Yeah.
Different
He's
is not bad. It's just different, right?
different can make a big difference.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. So he speaks two languages now. That's great. I
I
can't see
know.
that's from nonverbal. And
Yes.
from what I understand, he was self-injurious and things like that too. And that's got
Correct.
to be heartbreaking as a mother
Yes.
because you can't we spend all those years trying to protect our children from things without, and then you have this thing within that's causing them to hurt themselves. So I know that you were excited when you started seeing those good results right away. So, and that's, I'll tell you, I tell people all the time, I'm happy I'm in an office by myself sometimes when I get some of the phone calls I get because we don't realize I have four children. None of them are on the spectrum. I don't realize that I didn't realize how much I took it for granted that some things that would annoy me would make your heart leap for joy,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
if you have a neurotypical kid, thank God for every little thing that annoys you about them. And
Yes.
if you don't, then definitely look for the victories where they come and be very thankful for those as well. So it's a crazy journey, but here we are all these years later. Now we have a capsule form, we have a drink powder form, and we're helping people all over the world. We have a lady in the UK that sells it on a website over there, and we're actually talking with a big.com right now that ships internationally, which I'm excited about because we get a lot of emails from people internationally that we can't ship to, but this .com can. So I'm excited about that. We're going to be able to help even a lot more people very soon. So, Dr. Hadapogla, I sure appreciate you being here this
Thank
morning.
you.
I appreciate your work and your tenacious spirit, and I'm just happy that you found something to help Bartu and that it turned into something that helps so many other people.
Thank you. I'm grateful for all you do for us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us. Any words of wisdom as we part?
I just would like to tell the parents out there to be patient. Patience is the most important wisdom that we have to accumulate because things really gets better, much better.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
It's a
You have a
pleasure. Thank you.
you have a great day. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. Dr. Hadapoglu has a great heart. I was so excited to get her on this morning. She travels a lot. As you heard, she has a very, very busy life. So it was fortunate that we were able to get her on here today to tell us about her journey with our key ingredient, anandinol, how she came about it, the endocannabinoid system, how it works, and how you can view this as a bit of a CBD alternative. As I said, I'm not against CBDs. I just know that the law is still ambiguous. The long-term health studies are still kind of lacking, and the price is there too. They can be very pricey. So we want to do what we can to offer an alternative if possible, and it can be part of the whole. We do have a lot of parents who use CBDs or multi-spectrum hemp in conjunction with neural balance with anandinol, and they get great results with that as well. So as always, thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of the Spectrum Report. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe and hit that bell so you'll be notified of future content. If you're watching on Facebook, then like and follow. And if you would like tips and feedback from other parents or caregivers who might be struggling with the same thing you're struggling, search Neural Balance Support Group on Facebook and ask to join. We'll ask you 3 simple questions, and if you don't appear to be a serial killer, we'll let you in the group. And if you are a serial killer, we'll kick you back out. So please join us. Thank you for joining us today. Keep an eye out for new content. Have a great day.
Because of neurobalance, my daughter can sleep through the night consistently, which hasn't happened in years, and we are so thankful.